I was reorganizing the kitchen cabinets when my father-in-law said, "Why do you always need to leave your mark?" My mother-in-law added, "Control issues run in your blood?" My husband said, "She's just trying to be helpful." I stepped back. That evening, I left every cabinet open with sticky notes, quoting each of their comments. They haven't moved a plate since. I didn't grow up with much. I'm not saying that to make anyone feel bad for me, just to explain where I'm coming from. My mom worked 2 jobs, and I was basically raising my little sister from the time I was 9. Our house was clean because I kept it clean. Bills got paid because I tracked every dollar. Chaos made me anxious, so I did whatever I could to create order. When I married Dan, I thought he got that. He used to say it was one of the things he loved about me, how I kept everything together. He'd call me the calm in the storm. That was before we lost everything. We were renting this decent little apartment in Sacramento. Not fancy, but it was ours. Then the layoffs hit. I lost my admin job first, and 2 months later Dan's health crashed out of nowhere. Severe stomach pain turned into emergency surgery, then a month of complications. The bills stacked up fast. Our savings drained. He couldn't work. I couldn't find anything steady. His parents offered their downstairs suite, and at the time it felt like a blessing. Looking back now, it was a trap. We moved in thinking it would be temporary. That's what they said. Just until you two get back on your feet. They made it sound generous. But from the second I walked in with that first moving box, Cheryl, my mother-in-law, started making little comments. "Oh, you brought all your kitchen stuff? We have everything we need here. Just put that in the garage for now. It's just easier if we keep our system." Their system was a joke. Expired food crammed in the pantry. Glass measuring cups in 3 different cabinets. Mugs on one shelf, lids on another. It drove me nuts, but I stayed quiet. For weeks. I bit my tongue so hard I thought I'd bleed. Then one day, after cleaning up a grease slick of a stovetop that nobody but me seemed to notice, I lost it. Dan was out at a doctor's appointment. I grabbed trash bags, labels, shelf liners. I spent 5 hours cleaning, tossing, organizing. I didn't throw out anything without checking dates. I stacked things in a way that made actual sense. I even wiped every surface with antibacterial spray. I didn't want thanks, I just wanted order. When they came home, I was finishing up. Jack, my father-in-law, walked into the kitchen, looked around like something smelled bad, then opened a cabinet. And I'll never forget it. He turned slowly toward me and said, flat as stone, "Why do you always need to leave your mark?" I blinked. I thought I misheard him. Then Cheryl walked in behind him, took one look around and added, with this nasty little smirk, "Control issues run in your blood?" Like that was something to laugh about. I looked at Dan, waiting for him to step in, say something, anything. And he just sighed. Like I was the problem. Like I had embarrassed him. Then he said it. "She's just trying to be helpful." That was it. Not, "Don't talk to her like that." Not, "She spent all day cleaning this place." Nothing that made me feel like I mattered. Just this pathetic little sentence that hung in the air and made me feel invisible. They all just walked out after that. And I stood there in a kitchen that I had just poured my energy into, suddenly feeling like an intruder in my own damn life. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I went downstairs, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not because I was sad, but because something in me snapped. I realized then, this was never going to change unless I changed it. So around 1 a.m., when the house was quiet, I went back upstairs. And I opened every single cabinet. Every drawer. I didn't move anything, I just made it obvious. Then I grabbed the sticky notes. I started with Jack. On the cabinet where the mugs were neatly stacked, I left a note. "Why do you always need to leave your mark?" Jack, 5:38 p.m. Next, Cheryl. On the drawer where I'd organized the random tools, I left. "Control issues run in your blood?" Cheryl, 5:39 p.m. And then Dan. On the pantry door. "She's just trying to be helpful." Dan, 5:40 p.m. Yellow sticky notes. Big, neat handwriting. Nothing dramatic, just their words, staring back at them. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee like nothing had happened. Cheryl came in first, opened a drawer, stopped cold. She didn't even reach for a spoon, just closed it and left. Jack came in next, looked at 2 notes, didn't say a word, and walked back out. Dan stood in the middle of the room, looking around like he was trying to solve a puzzle. He looked at me. I looked at him. I didn't say a damn thing. That was 3 weeks ago. You know what's funny? No one's moved a thing. The notes are still there. The cabinet's still open. The label's still untouched. They've stopped using the kitchen. Cheryl now microwaves soup in paper bowls. Jack eats out. Dan avoids the room altogether. They don't talk to me much anymore, but they sure don't talk to me either. They wanted to accuse me of needing control? Fine. Let's see how they like it when I actually take it. And I'm not done yet. They thought I'd back down. I could feel it in the way they started moving around the house like I was radioactive. Polite smiles, quiet avoidance, the occasional forced good morning like we were strangers in a hotel. The sticky notes stayed up. Not one was touched. I noticed they were being careful, like they were waiting for me to slip up or lose it so they could play the victim. But I didn't give them the satisfaction. I kept the house spotless. I cooked exactly once a week, only for Dan and myself. I labeled leftovers and stuck them in the fridge. I cleaned the bathroom, even though no one thanked me. I stayed ahead of every possible complaint, and that drove Cheryl insane. One night, I came upstairs to get a glass of water and caught her in the kitchen with her phone out, taking pictures. At first, I thought maybe she was documenting something, until I heard her say under her breath, "Let's see how perfect she looks with a little evidence." She didn't know I was behind her. I didn't confront her. Not then. I just backed away and waited. The next day, I got a call from Dan while I was out running errands. "Hey," he said, voice weirdly flat. "Mom told me you've been, leaving stuff out to mess with her." I pulled the car over. "What the hell are you talking about?" She showed me pictures. Dishes in the sink. A sticky note that said, "Stop touching my system." "Did you write that?" "No," I said. "And you know I didn't." Silence. "Dan," he sighed. "She's just stressed." That phrase again. She's just. Always an excuse. Never a boundary. I hung up without saying anything else. I sat in the car for 10 minutes with my hands shaking, but this time from pure, cold clarity. I was never going to be accepted here. Not by Cheryl. Not by Jack. And, maybe most painful of all, not even by Dan. I drove home, walked in, and went straight to the cabinet where she'd put that fake sticky note. Ripped it down. Then I took a photo of her sticky note. Handwriting was different. Off-center. Definitely not mine. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out a journal I hadn't touched since my early 20s and started documenting everything. Dates. Times. Photos. Exact quotes. Passive-aggressive texts from Cheryl. Timestamp ignored it. Every single thing. If they wanted to build a case against me, fine. I'd build one right back. A week later, Cheryl accidentally tossed out a bag of groceries I'd labeled organic vegetables I had bought for Dan's special diet. She said she thought they were expired. Jack started walking around humming obnoxiously loud every time I was in the room, muttering phrases like, "Some people just can't take a joke," loud enough for me to hear. Dan saw it all, and he said nothing. That was when something inside me started to harden. My therapist, before I had to stop going thanks to the bills, once told me, "You can't force respect, but you can make people regret disrespect." I finally understood what she meant. One night, I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I went into the kitchen, opened one cabinet, and wrote a single new sticky note. "Don't forget, walls remember everything." The next morning, all 3 of them were acting tense. Jack slammed doors. Cheryl called Dan into the living room and closed the door behind them. I heard her say my name in a low hiss. Dan didn't come downstairs that night. I texted him. No reply. At 1:07 a.m., I heard him coming down the steps. He crawled into bed, turned away from me, and said, You need to stop antagonizing them. I stared at the ceiling. Antagonizing them? Can we just keep the peace? Please? Just until we're out of here. And that's when I knew. He didn't care what they did to me. He just wanted me to stay quiet. Stay small. Keep absorbing the hits so he could pretend everything was fine. The next day, I called a friend from my old job, someone who owed me a favor. Asked if she still had that contact in property management.
She did.
I asked about short-term sublets, studios, anything. She said she'd get back to me. I wasn't going to run away, not yet. But I was going to prepare. Because once I made my move, I wanted it to hurt. Not with yelling. Not with violence. With silence, precision, and proof. And when it all came crashing down, they wouldn't see me coming. 2 days after Dan asked me to keep the peace, my friend called back. There's a month-to-month studio in North Highlands, she said. It's tiny but clean. Under $900. Utilities included. Want me to hold it? I didn't say yes right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I wasn't ready to leave without finishing what I started. Give me 2 weeks, I told her. I needed time. That weekend, I overheard something that changed everything. Jack and Cheryl were in the living room. I had come upstairs to grab laundry, and as I passed the hallway, I heard Jack say, "She's trying to turn Dan against us." Then Cheryl said something that stopped me cold. "If we push hard enough, she'll leave on her own. She doesn't belong in this family." It wasn't frustration. It was strategy.
And it clicked.
That's why the sticky notes pissed them off so much. Not because they were rude, but because they worked. They exposed them without giving them anything to attack. They couldn't twist it. They couldn't pretend to be victims. And that scared them. I realized this wasn't just about a kitchen. It never was. This was about control.
Territory. Power.
And Cheryl didn't want a daughter-in-law. She wanted an obedient guest. So I started laying traps. Quietly. Carefully. I set up an old phone with a voice recording app and left it charging under the couch in the living room. I did the same in the kitchen using an old Bluetooth speaker with a hidden SD card slot. Nothing illegal, just in common areas where everyone knew I could be. In 5 days, I recorded Cheryl mocking me, calling me mental, telling Jack I had probably faked being laid off for attention. Jack saying, "I bet she's on something." That would explain the obsession with labeling. But the worst was Dan. One night, when I was out getting groceries, Dan was on the couch with them, laughing along. "She's just sensitive," he said. My biggest mistake was letting her think this was ever going to be her house too. That one hit like a punch to the gut. He wasn't being quiet. He wasn't defending me. He was right there, throwing me under the bus to get their approval. Like a teenage boy trying to win his mom's attention back. I saved every file. Copied it all to the cloud. Backed it up twice. Dated and labeled. I wasn't just documenting their behavior. I was building leverage. And then something unexpected happened. Cheryl's cousin Nora came by. I'd only met her twice before. Once at a barbecue. Once at Christmas. She was older, in her 60s maybe, and lived across town. She showed up unannounced one afternoon while everyone else was out. I let her in, offered her tea, and we sat awkwardly at the table. She looked around the kitchen and said, "This place looks better than I've ever seen it." I just nodded. She looked at me closely. "They treat you like help, don't they?" I froze. "They used to do it to me too," she said. "I lived here for 2 years in the 90s. After my divorce. Same thing." Cheryl undermined everything. Jack acted like I was squatting. I cleaned, I cooked, and they still made me feel like garbage. I just stared at her. She smiled sadly. "They always break people down until they leave. It's what they do." And then she leaned in and said, "Don't let them do it to you." I didn't cry, but something shifted. For the first time, I had proof that it wasn't just me. And that made me more dangerous. Because now I had motive, evidence, and a plan. I waited until Cheryl's birthday. She always hosted a brunch, made a big deal about it. That year, she invited a few extended relatives and one of her church friends. They were all in the living room drinking mimosas, bragging about Cheryl's perfect home. I walked upstairs with a manila envelope, walked right up to Cheryl, and handed it to her in front of everyone. "What's this?" she asked. "Just something you should see before I go." Then I turned to Dan, "And you should listen to what your family really thinks of you when you're not in the room." I walked out. In the envelope, a USB stick and a printed transcript of the worst quotes. Jack mocking Dan, Cheryl calling him weak, all of them talking behind each other's backs. But most of all, Dan's own words, betraying me. Let them all turn on each other. I wasn't staying to watch. Not yet. But I wasn't gone for good either. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about one blow. Sometimes it's about watching people rot in the mess they built, with no one left to blame but themselves. I didn't go far. That same day, I moved into the small studio in North Highlands. It was nothing special. One window. Hot as hell in the afternoons. But it was mine. I slept on an air mattress and ate microwaved rice bowls for the first week, and I felt more peace in that tiny box than I'd felt in 6 months under their roof. Dan didn't call.
Not that day.
Not the next. I figured he was embarrassed. Or angry. Or both. But I knew what I left behind. 3 days later, the messages started. "Dan, can we talk? You blindsided everyone. That wasn't okay. You didn't have to do it like that." I ignored them. Then Cheryl texted. That shocked me. "Cheryl, I don't appreciate you twisting things. You've caused a lot of damage. Jack is furious. We've had to cancel everything. Dan's not doing well." That one made me laugh. I knew damn well Dan had been not doing well for months. He just didn't care enough to fix it. A week passed. Then Nora reached out. "Nora, I'm not saying what you did was nice, but it was necessary. Just so you know, Cheryl and Jack are in separate bedrooms. And Dan? He's staying at a friend's." You lit a fuse and walked away. That was never the goal, but I didn't lose sleep over it either. What really sealed it was what happened 2 weeks later. I got a call from Dan. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was flat, worn out. No anger this time. "I get it now. I really do. I didn't stand up for you, and I let them walk all over us. Over you. I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet. But all I did was make you feel like you were alone." He paused, then added. "Mom and Dad are talking about selling the house. Too much tension. No one trusts anyone. And I guess that's my fault too." He said he missed me. That he wanted to start over. I sat on the floor of that little studio and listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Because here's what I finally understood. I didn't need to rebuild anything. I had already done all the rebuilding alone. I had bent myself backward, trying to fit into a space that was never meant for me. And once I stopped trying, they all collapsed without me lifting another finger. That wasn't revenge. That was just gravity. But the sticky notes? The recordings? The envelope? That was the part one chose. The part that made them look in the mirror and sit with the wreckage of their own words. 2 months later, I heard through Nora that Cheryl had stepped down from her volunteer position at church. Apparently, one of her friends heard a clip. The one where she called me mental and said I probably faked my job loss. It made the rounds. Jack now eats out alone most nights. His words about Dan, how he called him spineless and weak, leaked too. From inside their own family group text. Dan's staying with a coworker. I don't know where he'll end up. I'm not cruel enough to wish him pain. But I sure as hell don't wish him back into my life. I'm working again. Got hired by a medical office in Midtown. Small team.
Good pay.
I come home to silence, and no one questions where I keep my mugs or how I stack my plates. No one tells me I have control issues. No one tries to tear me down just to feel big. And I no longer leave sticky notes. I don't need to. Because now, when I walk into my kitchen, every cabinet open or closed exactly how I want, I remember this. I didn't lose control. I took it back. And I never plan to give it up again.